Yuji licked his chapped lips and swallowed subconsciously, but there was no sweetness to wet his throat. A woman with pink hair, the boy looked towards the highest place on the hillside, and a hint of disappointment appeared in his blue and purple eyes. Also, the water in the river has dried up, and if the cherry blossom trees can bloom, it will be a ghost. The delicate boy whispered, and from time to time he raised his eyes and glanced up at the hillside, as if he wanted to wait for the miracle to come. How do you tell, Rin? When the cherry blossoms bloomed the year before, I seemed to be sleeping under a tree. Yaji recalled carefully, and soon came to the top of the hillside. Looking around, a piece of bare branches is there, and the ground under my feet has cracked in some places, let alone the sky full of cherry blossoms, not even a single petal can be seen. Yuji had a small face, and looked towards the ground pitifully. Yuji touched the small bag he brought with him. He had promised Rin before that he would fill a small bag of cherry blossoms and bring it home. Now this plan can be said to be completely ruined. Crack, the slender branches lose their former tenacity, and they break easily when they break. Withered. If there is moisture, if you want to break these branches, Yuji will have to use all his strength. The sun is high in the sky, and the season when the cherry blossoms are blooming is far less hot, but without the water supply, a layer of fine sweat has long been erupting on Yuji's white forehead. The cherry trees on the hillside are almost all like this. The mountains are full of bare branches, without any vitality, and they look very desolate. Yuji found a stone and sat down, touched the small bag tied around his waist, supported his cheeks with his hands, and his small face was full of sorrow. How do you explain to Rin? The cherry tree planted in the shrine did not bloom. He promised his sister, who was seriously ill at home, that he would fill the mountain with cherry blossoms. All little hands frantically rubbed the hair, messing up a beautiful pink hair. Ah! Yuji was taken aback. He didn't scream so loudly. There is alertness on his little face. I don't know when since then, more and more fierce beasts wander outside the village. Every time he walks out of the village, he will carry a special sachet in the shrine to cover his scent. Who is so careless? Yuji glanced at the village below the mountain, and then identified the source of the screams, gritted his teeth, and carefully sneaked towards the source of the screams. The hillside is too far away from the village. When he runs over to inform his father, the villagers will be finished. As a family of gods in the village, he naturally has to take the responsibility of guarding the village. This is the thought that my father has instilled in him since he was a child. Of course. Seeing that the form is wrong, he won't go up with a stupidly. Held the training wooden knife slung around his waist with his left hand, arched his waist, and searched for it all the way. With the bare cherry trees and other withered plants, Yaji reached out half of his head and looked down the mountain. A huge, bear-like beast bit the young man's upper body and shook it wildly. Yuji's pupils shrink. The limbs of the bear have obvious purple crystals. Under the sun's rays, those crystals faintly reflect pink light, which is extraordinarily beautiful. Yuji doesn't think so. That is a monster. The villagers of Ye village call them yokai. These monsters are so powerful that the maiden who guarded the village last time died under the claws of the monsters. Yuji's small face was slightly pale. He thought it was an ordinary beast. How could he have thought it was such a monster? This hillside is close to the village. Once the patrol team in the village finds a monster, it will notify the shrine to deal with it. However, around the village, there are usually no monsters. There are quite a lot of fierce beasts with a slightly larger size. If he has a good edge in his hand, he will dare to go forward and fight. But yokai? Yuji vaguely remembers that when the monster was killed for the first time in the village, people happily carried the body of the monster back to the village. In this era, there are few opportunities to eat meat, and the fierce beasts that appear outside the village from time to time are rare delicacies. People only treat monsters as larger beasts. After grilling and sharing food, some villagers turned grey and turned into monsters that only attacked people. There are some villagers whose physique is slightly improved, but after using too much meat, they will still turn into monsters. The monster has no consciousness and can only attack humans. My father said that it was the hatred of the dead monster at work. Yuji didn't know what was true, and he couldn't tell what was true. According to common sense, he should return to the village as soon as possible and tell his father, let him lead the young man to kill the monster. But Yuji did not dare to move, his pupils were tightened to the extreme. This was the first time he saw a monster cannibalizing scene. The smell of blood easily concealed the smell of dust. The corpse lying on the ground was motionless. The monster only took a few mouthfuls and swallowed the man. After the monster left, it took another 10 minutes before Yuji dared to get up. When he came here, the bear-shaped monster was biting the man's upper body and shaking it wildly, as if something flew out of his pocket and fell aside. And besides the screams, he can only understand roughly. Even the clothes that the poor man wore were very different from them. Why do foreigners come here? Yuji walked towards the pool of blood, except for the torn pieces of clothes, not even a bone residue was left. The blood droplets splashed in the blood beach and other places always remind Yuji of the brutality of the monsters when they devoured people. Holding back the stomach discomfort, Yuji looked for the flying shadow. Not far away, Yuji found the dark shadow under a dead tree. It's a rectangular weird thing. It should have been thrown out of the person's pocket and hit the trunk before it fell down. Yuji saw some familiar pictures from the rectangular ancient monster above. Roar! The roar of the fierce beast was heard in the distance, and Yuji immediately stuffed the rectangular ancient monster product into the small bag and turned back on the mountain road from the past. Don't think too much, it seems that the smell will attract a lot of fierce beasts. All the way back to the top of the mountain, from above, you can see the scene in the village. Yuji feels relieved. Take out the rectangular ancient monster product from the small bag. What? One side of the weird rectangle is shining brightly, and the people on the screen. Sakura. Why is Sakura in it? Yuji's little face was shocked. You reading www.udgonshu.com, is this not much better than seeing monsters eating people? Sakura will not be sealed in this evil box, right? No. Yuji took a few deep breaths and looked carefully at the evil long box in his hand. Sakura is his younger sister, who has been living together since childhood. How could he not know each other? Although the sealed girl in the evil long box is eighth similar to Sakura, Sakura is obviously much smaller than her. What is even more bizarre is that the Sakura sealed in the evil long box actually has a pair of pink donkey ears. The girl Sakura wore the costume of the shrine maiden in the Ye village shrine, which surprised and delighted Yuji. Are you Sakura? Why don't you speak? Are you sealed inside? If you are sealed inside, you blink your eyes, and I will try to save you out. The Sakura in the evil long box still didn't speak. Ye was anxious, and the little hand suddenly touched a button. There was a strange music suddenly in the evil long box. Yuji shook his small hand and almost threw the evil long box out. Yuji suddenly remembered the legends of various monsters in the shrine. Is it possible that the Sakura in the evil long box is actually changed by the bewitching monster? Yuji glanced at the evil long box with a jealous look, and stretched out his little hand to touch the donkey ears. The girl Sakura in the picture suddenly changed a posture, and the expression on her pretty face also turned into a disgusting look. She stood sideways with her arms folded in front of her chest, and there was an unknown black gas all over her body. The captain's supplies are fully guaranteed, and the captain's copy will drop 0. The blue panel clearly records the moves of and various power analysis. It gives the feeling of Yuji, just like the glowing side of an evil long box. Crazy flower blooming dazzling blade bulk. These are the 3 effects of the branch of. Yuji's eyes widened, and he looked at everything in front of him. Incredible. When he saw this weird thing for the first time, he still couldn't understand what was written on it, but now he can actually understand what it means. Eyes upward, in the upper right corner, there are 3 characters skill points, followed by the number. Yiji is unclear. Yiji subconsciously reached out and touched it, and clicked on. There is a chance that the enemy will bleed when hit. Next to there is an upward arrow symbol. Add a bit. Yiji, who was still in a daze, clicked down, the skill points in the upper right corner decreased, and the circular pattern representing the lightened up. I don't feel much. Can't add it. Yiji added some more too, and he didn't feel much about it. While Yiji was still at a loss, he suddenly saw another weird yellow-brown head pattern in the lower left corner, beside the pattern, the words Inverse God which were clearly written. Inverse God. Yiji naturally neglected the word Miko. He was nurtured by his father since childhood and had high respect for the gods enshrined in the village. The impact of these 2 words on him was too great. Rebellious God. Isn't it rebellious against God? What did he do just now? The evil long box won't run into his body, right? How to do? How to do? He was bewitched by the monster again? Me. Hey, Yiji is like a drowning man who grabbed the last straw, like a spring on his back, instantly got up from the shop. Hoo panting heavily, her hair dampened with sweat sticking together. Not far away, Sakura and Rin were still asleep on the shop. Yiji only felt a chaos in his mind. He should have had a nightmare just now, a nightmare about God. He probably couldn't even remember any of the others. Swallowed, because of lack of water, my throat is itchy. Eightfold Ji got up from the shop, put on his clothes and walked out of the room. Shinto shrine was built on the highest place in the village, and a hint of whiteness just appeared on the horizon. Their family has lived here for generations, and his father is the eightfold of this generation. If nothing else, within a few years, Yae Sakura will become a shrine maiden to make up for the lack of a shrine maiden position. When his father gets old, maybe he will take over the position of the eightfold and continue to guard the village. The wind was a little bit cold in the early morning, so Yiji found some water to drink. In the past few years, there have been frequent severe droughts, and the harvest of crops grown by villagers has become less and less. If this continues, let alone water for crops and animals, even people are reluctant to drink water. The patrol team in the village did not continue to patrol these days. A few days ago, Yiji still faintly heard the sound of disputes coming from the conference room. Is about sacrifices. I don't know when it started. Whenever the village encounters such a disaster, it will offer sacrifices to the gods in order to get rain from the gods. This method works in most cases, and often a shower of rain will come after a few days after the sacrifice. But Yiji was very disgusted with this. The sacrifice needed for the sacrifice must be a pure girl. Since the death of the Miko in the battle, this kind of sacrifice has been held by his father, the lord of the village. In the past few years, it was fine when the weather was good, but now he will never forget the scene of the sacrifice a few years ago. Yiji shook his head vigorously, the sweat beaded from the sweaty hair. He patted his forehead vigorously with his small hand. How could he think about these messy things? The irritable Yiji brought the wooden training knife from the side and waved it, as if he wanted to vent the inexplicable irritability in his heart, squandering his physical strength wantonly. Split with a knife on the side. Sweep backhand. Yiji naturally used the Luyingzan which his mother taught him. A paragraph. Second paragraph. 3 sections. 4 paragraphs. 5 sections. When was closing the sword and preparing to use Shushan, Yae was stunned. I didn't control one well, and the wooden knife in his hand fell to the ground with Yiji. The first 4 paragraphs are actually not difficult, mainly starting from the 5th paragraph, you need to use the power of body rotation. If you deliberately imitate it, it will appear to be extremely stiff, and not everyone can imitate it. Even his father is so-so with the 5th stage of, and his power is not as powerful as the first 4. But he unexpectedly finished the 5th paragraph just now. He even almost used the sixth paragraph of the instant flash. Yi looked at the wooden training knife in his hand blankly. Make a good move. Split with a knife on the side. Sweep backhand. Cut the waist after turning. Fuck back. With the help of turning the waist, the whole person turned in the air, and the whole body was filled with strength on the long knife. Immediately after turning around to accumulate energy, flashed instantly. The whole person turned into an afterimage and teleport 7 or 8 meters forward, and a cherry-colored knife light flashed by. Try this. Yi turned his head and found that his father had thrown a sharp sword over. Snapped. The small hand held the handle firmly. The sword grows a lot more than the average samurai sword, let alone a child's 8-fold sword. With a slight concentration, the 6 segments of are used again by 8-fold Ji Shinoyan. The knife light that flashed from the last instant, even cut off the stone pillar beside the shrine. Father. The middle-aged man who was in a pensive state looked at Ye Ji, and the figure of his deceased wife seemed to appear in the sun in front of him. Oh, the middle-aged man sighed suddenly, unfortunately you are not a girl. Hey! Ye Ji was slightly taken aback, and didn't understand what his father meant for a while. Ignored Ye Ji, the middle-aged man said to himself, in the legend, a person who fully uses the power of a sword to fully perform can exert unexpected powers and be able to kill monsters more easily. Ye Ji thought of the human eater bear I saw yesterday, a chill rose from the tailbone, his head drooped, and his expression turned from his excitement to a downturn. Father, I didn't realize any incredible power, nor did I have the confidence to kill monsters. A big hand covered Yi Ji's small head and rubbed it vigorously, messing up a beautiful pink hair. You are still young, and one day you will become a witch stronger than your mother. Well, a swordsman stronger than your mother. Just keep this knife. When you are fine, you can go to the house where the spirit sword is enshrined. Yi Ji tried to raise his head under his father's big hand, and the squeezed bangs covered his eyes, but the expectant light burst out of those demon eyes. Really? Can I touch the spirit sword? If Sakura Fubuki allows it, maybe you can use it. Lingdao Yingchuxu trembles slightly in his hand, as if expressing its dissatisfaction with this black pot. The indoor atmosphere was very embarrassing. Father. The slightly thin middle-aged man in front of him recovered from Sakura Fubuki, swept towards Yi Ji, and asked, Sakura Fubuki made the knife wave just now. Yes, yes, yes. Yi Ji's little head is like a stick of garlic, it's Sakura Fubuki's hands. Ye Ji raised his head and looked at this stern father. The surprised and happy expression on his face made Ye Ji very puzzled. Is it impossible? The spirit sword Sakura Chugzu is really like the legend, whoever picks it up, who is its owner? Gee, anyone can pick up the spirit sword enshrined in the shrine, but if you want it to release a wave of swords, you must be a pure woman who has a high respect for the gods to succeed. There is still a condition before this, those who hold Sakura Chugzu have a sword heart that breaks free from the shackles. At this time, Yi Ji didn't know what expression to put on, and had high respect for the gods? Can someone who slander the gods secretly be counted? Pure girl? But he is a man. In the future, even if the son inherits his father's inheritance, he will be the new eightfold god, not the shrine maiden of the eightfold shrine. The last point. Jiangxin who broke free from the shackles? Isn't this nonsense? He only remembered that he used his skills to light up the branch of in a daze in his dream. Does this count as having a sword heart that breaks free from the shackles? There are also things that happened in the dream, do you want to tell your father? Anxious Yi Ji followed his father to the open space in the center of the shrine. Show a set of in that direction, remember, don't split it diagonally. Yi Ji nodded, and the direction his father pointed was the gate of Ye Shrine. The so-called gate of Ye Shrine was supported by only 2 pillars, and the outside scene could be seen at a glance. Below the gate of the shrine is a long staircase, and the path leading to the shrine staircase is full of trees, but because of the severe drought, the canopies of those big trees only have a few dead leaves. After a gust of wind, the last trace of the canopy, the dignity is not there, only the bald head is left. Yiji was slightly focused, and quickly began to slash through the clouds in 6 stages. In the 5th section of the so-called watershed, the spirit sword held by Yiji suddenly burst into a wave of cherry-colored knives, slashing straight toward the canopy on the path outside the shrine. Go! Crack now, even the bare head of the tree disappeared. Sakura knife wave also gradually dissipated not far away. How do you feel? The Eightfold God Lord asked. Sakura Fukuyuki puts a heavy burden on my body. I can't perform it a few times like Rockera slash, and I can't support it physically. Yaji said truthfully. Yet. The Eightfold God Lord nodded, put the spirit sword back to the place of worship. From now on, you can go to the side hall to accompany the spirit sword every day. The Eightfold God Lord turned around and walked 2 steps, then turned around. There is a sacrifice to be held the day after tomorrow, you bring Sakura, let her learn more. Flashed through his childhood the sacrifice and the sacrifices to the gods. Yaji's body trembled for a moment. Yes. Yiji put the spirit sword back to the place where it was enshrined in the side hall. He had many questions. Why can he use Sakura Fubuki to give out incredible power? Why did he have what his father called Jiangxin? Yiji sat on the futon in the middle of the side hall, closing his eyes and thinking hard. Not long after, someone repaired the wooden door of the side hall. He saw Yiji sitting there and glanced at the faintly shining spirit sword. The 2 villagers first worshipped the enshrined spirit sword, and then began to carefully repair it. The wooden door comes. Squeak with a soft sound. The carpenter who repaired the wooden door once again worshipped the spirit sword before closing the door and leaving. But Yiji still sat there motionless. Imagined the weird blue panel out of thin air in his mind, but he couldn't press it anyhow, there was no sense of reality at all. Only in a dream does it appear. Yiji was unsure of his mind. The blue panel that appeared in his dream was somewhat similar to the picture on the evil long box. He also encountered that weird world of steel and cement in his dream. In that world, it seemed that everyone has an evil long box, which is a weird existence called a mobile phone. After lunch, Yaji casually made up a story to dismiss the 2 curious little cats, and continued to return to the side hall dedicated to the spirit sword to meditate. Evening. Yiji pushed open the wooden door of the side hall that had just been repaired, and found a dark shadow in the main hall dedicated to the gods. Frowned, Yiji thought it was unusual. Even if villagers come to worship, it is usually early in the morning, even if it is noon and afternoon, but it is the first time to come to worship the gods in the evening when the sky is going to be dark. Passing by the entrance of the main hall dedicated to the fox god, Yiji vaguely saw a familiar figure. Asuk. The distance is too far. The young man named Daisuke didn't hear it at all. Instead, he knelt down on the ground religiously, and boom! Bang! Bang! Daisuke seemed to be mad, knocking his head on the hard floor again and again. That voice! It's crazy! Yaji shook his head. Daisuke was a few years older than him. The 2 were not too familiar, and Yaji didn't want to take care of him. Walked back to the restroom on the left of the shrine. Read www.yuyuganshu.com. Yaji saw Sakura and Rin, and the big eyes of the 2 little girls were staring at him gleamingly. Touched his face, Yaji smiled and said, "What's wrong? Are there flowers on my face?" Yae Sakura, wearing a small witch costume, came to him, raised her little nose, sniffing his body like a little fox. The legend is true, the spirit sword Sakura Fubuki really exudes the scent of cherry blossoms. Hey! Yaji was a little dazed. Brother, I also want to smell the scent of Sakura Fukuyuki. Yae-rin, who was sitting in the shop, said expectantly. Yiji walked over and rubbed his little head. What do you think? If you are curious, I will bring Sakura Chubuki over tomorrow so that you can see it. Really? Sakura and Rin asked in unison. Real. Really. Really. Brother is the best. Long live my elder brother. Just as the three brothers and sisters were playing around, a knock on the door suddenly sounded. Sakura and Rin immediately sat there like good babies. Generally, those who come here at this point are all fathers. Boom Boom Yiji wondered, at most my father would just knock on the door and come in, but today? Isn't it a father? Yiji instantly thinks of Daisuke who came to the shrine to pay homage to the gods before. Stepped forward and opened the door. As expected, it is the tall and thin Daisuke. May I come in? Looking at Daisuke whose forehead was stained with blood, Yaji nodded hard. Sakura, go get some linen. This is the second night when Yaji broke the long box. Because of Daisuke's affairs, Yaji was thinking about sacrifices. It was not until midnight that his spirit could not resist fatigue and fell asleep. In his dream, he came to that weird steel city again, and he realized the difference between faith and superstition. And taking living people to sacrifice to gods is undoubtedly a kind of ignorant and backward thinking. What happened in the dream had a huge impact on Yiji. God, it seems to be nothing. In the records of the Ye clan, the previous generations of the gods and even the witches in the clan have paid tribute to the faces of the gods. As for whether it is true or not, Yaji is also unknown. Yiji thought, and what he called the skill panel appeared in front of him again. Upper right corner. There is no sign of recovery for skill points. Yiji looked at the three branches of in detail. Except for the effect of, Yiji didn't understand the explanation of the other two tricks. What kind of combo count and the Hikaru mark made Yaji be bewildered, unable to find any ideas. If the mother is still there, he can still ask the other person, but now. Yiji suddenly remembered the Jingzhen that his father said, and the picture in front of him jumped as he pleased. The picture is not as complicated as the branch of. There are only two marks of loneliness, followed by the words Prujna's heart. Yiji lightly touched with his fingertips, the pharaoh's heart was in a grey-black state, there were no skill points, and it could not be lit. Is this what Jingzhen my father said? Yiji still couldn't understand, he clicked the plus sign behind the skill point again, and he didn't touch it at all. Oh, God knows what this thing has to do with Sakura Fukuyuki. Yiji silently complained, but the front of her eyes changed again, and the sword Sakurabuki was spinning inside the screen. Yiji's eyes widened. Spirit Blade Sakura Fubuki Wait, 14 Introduction, the sword enshrined at Ye Shrine. There are 4 lit little stars next to the load. What kind of attacks, knowing things, etc., in Yiji's view, these are many times more difficult than the branches of the cherry blossoms. Shining Sakura Random God? Rondo. The sword wave I sent out is actually called Rondo. How can I use that Zhou Chao Shen? Just as Yiji was still thinking about it, the faint light of the panel went black, and Yiji felt that someone was pushing him outside. Opened his eyes in a daze, only to find that Ye Sakura's little hands were pushing him gently, and seeing that she woke up, her little face was especially happy. Brother. Ye Sakura lowered her voice, you said last night you want to teach me swordsmanship. It seems to be something like that. Yuzakura blinked her eyes, her thin shoulders swelled slightly, and the excitement was fully expressed on that small face. I will serve my brother to get up. Don't. You go to the warehouse and get the wooden knife for training. I will go later. Yeji glanced at Ye-rin who was sleeping, and whispered, move lightly, don't disturb you too much. Yet. Ye Sakura nodded her head excitedly. The little girl who had been kneeling on the edge of the bunk quickly got up. She just wanted to run out of the room and glanced at Rin on the other side. Ye Sakura had no choice but to nod her feet and bow her waist. Try not to make a sound. The completely sober Yeji looked at Ye Sakura, who was posing cute moves, and smiled uncontrollably. Quickly got dressed, Yeji picked up the knife that had been sharpened by the bed, and walked out of the house slowly following the posture of Yae Sakura. Crack after a soft sound, Rin, who was originally sleeping, opened his eyes and kept staring in the direction of the door, with envy in his big eyes. Play once, and use it to the extent you can, don't force it. Yaeji, who held his arms around his chest, stared at the excited petite figure not far in front of him, and exhorted. Yes. Xiao Zireniar first took a deep breath, and began to play Luyingzan one by one. The maiden of Ye Shrine is the maiden who guards the village, which has been generally recognized by the villagers. The Eightfold God Lord mainly presides over the sacrifices, and also takes care of all other things in the village, but the combat power is not outstanding. However, which has been passed down from generations to generations by witches, is because of physical reasons, only women can often exert the most powerful power. The maiden who fully used has the opportunity to communicate with the spiritual sword enshrined in the shrine, Sakurabuki. This is why the witch is an important force to protect the village. Generally speaking, the contemporary witch symbolizes the peak force in the village. Whether you can kill monsters and protect the village, all these things depend on the witch. The preparatory maidens were all taught by the current maidens, but when Yiji's mother fell, Sakura and Rin were just a little bit insignificant. The village suddenly fell into a predicament that there was no strong force to protect it. Men can also practice. Unfortunately, their physical flexibility is very different from that of women. There are very few who can master the first 4 paragraphs. Usually, it is not a problem to kill ferocious beasts, but if it is true met the monster. Before Yiji smashed the long box, he could only use the first 4 paragraphs, and the later things, all after he lit up in his dream, just happened. Although his father was surprised at his speed of improvement, he didn't bother. Hi! Ha! Hi! Yae Sakura's petite body dances in the courtyard, showing off it has a sense of beauty, but in terms of power. Brother! Yae Sakura looked at Yaeji expectantly. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com said, how about my first 4 stages? Yuji smiled and said, very good. When I was as old as Sakura, I was far less powerful than Sakura. Then when can I be as good as my brother? It's coming soon. Yuji stepped forward and set the first stage of Rakutenzen's posture. Now watch me perform, stare at my wrist, and see the force technique. Yae Sakura widened her eyes and watched the Yae Sakura performing a full set of Sakura slashes, especially the light of the sword brought by the flash of the last instant, which made Yae Sakura's star eyes sparkle. Do you understand? Sakura nodded first, then shook her head quickly. Yuji, dumbfounded, stood behind Sakura, stretched out her hands over her shoulders, and rested her hands on Sakura's small hands. Now I'll bring momentum, so you can understand the first 2 paragraphs. Yae Sakura pursed her small mouth, did not speak, and looked at the position of the knife's hilt intently. A powerful force burst out. Split with a knife on the side. Sweep backhand. Yuzakura narrowed her eyes slightly, her brother behind her, she had the illusion that she could smash the legendary monster to death. Played several times in succession, Yaeji let go and let Sakura try it by herself. He really didn't know how to teach people, because even he flew here all the way with his skill points. Hi! Ha! Brother, how am I doing this time? Very good, at least the wrist is strong. Well, sooner or later, I will surpass you and become the shrine maiden who protects the village and everyone. Yuji smiled from the side, but looked into the distance. The guardian, Maiko. My lord god, it hasn't rained for 2 months. If this continues, the whole village will be finished. The villager sitting next to him echoed the old woman, yes, lord god, the candidate has been finalized, you see, should we prepare today for tomorrow's sacrifice ceremony? The middle-aged man sitting on the main seat drooped his eyelids slightly, as if he didn't care about anything. Ryo, what did her family say? It is a blessing to make her as a sacrifice to the great fox god. A middle-aged woman below said fiercely. Looking at her face, she had a relationship with the girl named Cool. 7 points are similar. Yes, Lord God, I can dedicate everything to the fox god and pray for the village. This. The old woman spoke again, and the surrounding villagers agreed. In the village, in addition to the detached status of the Ye shrine, the villagers often respect those who have lived for a long time. And this old woman is no different from the most respected one of them. What she said, even as the of Ye shrine, she must consider one or two things. Outside the conference hall, Yiji stopped Daesuk. At this time, Daesuk's eyes were irritated, his chest fluctuated violently, and his two big hands were clenched into fists. Feel a sense of irritability. Calm down. Yeji said lightly, you rush in and destroy it, and Ryo will be completely helpless. Yiji's words were like a bucket of icy cold water, completely extinguishing the anger in Daisuke's heart. Daesuk's whole person looked like a frustrated ball, languishing, and muttered, this is not good, that's not good, I said, this man who usually claims to be indomitable sobbed. Yiji frowned her delicate eyebrows, and was dissatisfied with Daisuke's performance. Let you think about it all night, you can't come up with ideas to persuade them. Me. Daesuk is like a child who has lost his toy, feeling at a loss. I went to find Ryo in the middle of the night, she. What's wrong with her? Yiji was impatient. She gave me the body. The voice of a small mosquito flies came out of the tall man's mouth, shocking Yiji. This is blasphemy. Yiji lowered his throat, hating that iron cannot become a steel track. When I heard about the words blasphemous, Daesuk, who was originally faint, turned pale in an instant, and said the words in his mouth without going through his head, I just thought that the sacrifices to Lord Fox God must be pure. Daughter, if Liang breaks her body, then... Yiji had a gloomy face. Although he had seen the weirdness of another world at a young age, he had no experience in dealing with such things. Hey, you go in and tell them by yourself, I can't help you much. Daisuke lowered his head, thank you. Yiji glanced at him deeply and turned forward. Boom boom, my father, I have something to see. Enter. Yiji pushed open the wooden door of the Chamber of Deputies, and the villagers who had a sad or fanatical face all put on a kind smile. One after another radiated kindness to Yiji. As the next of Ye Shrine, it is the last word to establish relationships in advance. Yiji looked around, then looked at the Ye God Lord who was sitting on the main seat. My father, there may be some accidents about tomorrow's sacrifice. Accident? People around have changed their faces. If an ordinary little furry boy dared to say this, they would never believe it, but as a child of the master, Yeji. Daesuk, you will explain it yourself. Yiji shouted to the outside, then bowed to the Ye God Lord who was sitting on the main seat, and silently retreated to the corner of the chamber to act as a small transparent. The tall and thin Daisuke walked into the hall step by step with a trembling body. So many people looked at him, and his heart was under great pressure. Among the villagers, a middle-aged couple changed their faces obviously. My Lord God! Daesuk fell to his knees. I grew up with Ryo since childhood, Great help, let's talk a lot, to Yiji, it's all nonsense. Sure enough, the villagers who came to discuss the ceremony showed impatience one by one, and some even looked at him, seemingly dissatisfied with him interrupting the discussion. Just yesterday, Ryo gave her body to me. She is no longer a pure girl. Please also Lord God. You fart. Among the villagers, a middle-aged woman jumped out, my house is cold and clean, and I have never messed with any wild boy. Yesterday I went to bed early. Which round is your toad to steal fishy? Cool is a sacrifice to the Lord Fox God, how can his noble status be tarnished by a wild child like you? That's it. Nonsense. How can Jisima make such friends? Where are his parents? The originally quiet conference hall suddenly became noisy as a vegetable market, and even the god Lord Ye also gestured at Yeji with his eyes. Yeji shook his head and continued to be his little transparent. He can only do this for Daesuk and Ryo, and he also wants to use this incident to test the villagers' attitude towards sacrifices and gods. If this continues, he is afraid that Rin will also encounter poisonous hands. Quiet. The Ye god lord sitting on the main seat made a speech, and the discussion hall that was noisy like a vegetable market suddenly fell silent. My lord god! My family Liang is really a pure girl, don't listen to that wild boy's nonsense. My family Liang is absolutely qualified to serve the great fox god. I'll just leave it to my mother-in-law to verify it when I see it. Someone next to him said. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com. Yeji was in a low mood. Before he was detained by the patrol, Daesuk specially bowed to him. The wound he had just bandaged last night shed blood again. However, Daesuk's face was very relaxed, and his body was broken. Ryo, who was not a pure girl, could not sacrifice to the gods. It seemed that the girl named Ryo should have escaped death once. Yeji's expression remained unchanged as he listened to the villagers' comments on him. If he becomes the of Ye Shrine, he will surely reverse the villagers' fanatical attitude towards gods. Will make the villagers more enlightened. Back in the room, Sakura was waving a training wooden knife. Rin was sitting in the shop and looked at her heroic sister with eyes full of stars. She patted her hand from time to time, and said words of praise to Sakura. Brother! Have you brought Sakura Chugzya here? Hearing the sound of Ling, Sakura stopped waving and turned to look at Ye. Obviously, both of these sisters have a keen interest in Ying Fuxu. You guys wait a moment. Yeji quickly ran to the side hall where the spirit sword was enshrined. Today's Daesuk almost made him forget his promise to the two little guys. Picked up the cherry blossoms from the wooden frame to blow snow, and the flamboyant Sakura special effects appeared again. Yeji walked towards the house with a knife. In the courtyard. My father, my lord. The middle-aged man glanced at Sakura Fukuyuki in Yeji's hand, and said, when there are no monsters, Sakura Fukuyuki must be enshrined in the shrine. Yes. Also, tomorrow's ceremonies will be held as usual. You bring cherry blossoms to the ceremony. Brother, did something happen? Seeing that Yeji's face was not good, Ye Sakura asked carefully from the side. No, Sakura, you go to bed early today, and my father asked me to take you to the ceremony tomorrow. Sacrifice ceremony. The well-behaved Ye Yingdai knelt on the floor and frowned, but I heard that big brother and sister Ryo have already, what's going on, offering sacrifices to Lord God, shouldn't she be a pure girl? I don't know either. Yeji shook his head, but he didn't think Daesuk was lying. It is impossible for the village to determine another pure girl to sacrifice in such a short period of time. The tricky part of this is probably due to the old woman who checks whether Cool is a virgin. On the other side, Ye Rin carefully stroked the back of Ying Fuxu's knife, and placed the entire spirit sword on the wooden stand. In Ye Rin's hands, this peerless beauty didn't show her sharp edge at all, but instead urged the faint cherry light on the hair knife to make it more gorgeous. His eyes have a slight sense of expectation, and his small hand is gently held on the handle made of special material. Is not as cold as the blade, but there is no response. The disappointment in the bottom of his eyes was well concealed, and Rin's little hand moved, as if he wanted to forcibly lift Sakura Chubuki on the knife holder. Maybe the reason for the weakness of the body, the Sakurabuki Shui on the knife rest does not move. Yeji saw Sakura's gaze from time to time and looked up at Sakura blowing snow, so he smiled and said, if you want to try it, try it. It's for you to see. Ying's petite body trembled slightly, her knees moved slightly, and her breath was once again in a blink of an eye. Is it really good to take the enshrined spirit sword out of the temple? Brother, punish. Yuji recalled the scene of holding Sakura Fukuyuki releasing Rondo, and smiled, if nothing else, I am the master of this generation of Sakura Fukitsuki. It is no problem not to take Sakura Bukitsu out of the shrine in normal times. Wow! Brother is amazing. Just as Yaji raised her head to accept Sakura's praise, Xiaonazai didn't even turn her head, and ran directly to the cherry-like shimmering Sakura Bukiswina. Yuji was speechless. I didn't expect my sister, who had been raising for so many years, would be abducted by a knife. Sister, can you pick it up? Rin's voice was full of expectation. Petite Sakura was also very excited, took a not standard horse stance, and held the handle of the knife tightly with two small hands. Hey Sakura's Sakura light grew stronger, and the blade was shaking slightly. Sister, how do you feel? Do you feel that you have become a powerful and outstanding witch? Was very excited, but Yae Sakura replied with difficulty, I feel it is heavy, and, moreover, I can't seem to control it. Yaeji, who was sitting in the distance, raised his eyebrows lightly, stood up and wanted to step forward to help his sister. Me, how can I not control it? Yae Sakura's tender voice even brought a hint of crying, it's running with me. Yuzakura clasped Sakura Fubuki's wrist tightly, and the Sakura color was bright and thick, and the whole spirit sword trembled slightly, as if she was instructing Yuzakura to do something. Split with a knife on the side. Not good. Yuji immediately drew the bladed tato from the sheath, and the whole person displayed the sixth paragraph of in an instant. Flashes instantly. The Sakura-colored sword light that brought up collided with the Sakura waves emitted by Sakura Fukuyuki. Boom! Successfully offset the round dance made by Sakura Fukyu, but Yaeji was not well, and the sword in his hand was still moaning, and Yaeji's hands were numb. Fortunately, this blow also successfully shook Sakura Fubuki from Yae Sakura's hands. Yuji took a long sigh of relief and threw the sword directly to the ground. Of the three siblings of the Yae family generation, except for the inherently weak Rin, Yae Sakura is the strongest one when it comes to the talent of swordsmanship. Yuji only relied on some weird things in his dream to greatly increase his strength, which was recognized by Ying Fuxu. Unlike Sakura, it is the first time that Yae Sakura picked up Sakura Bukiyuki, and the sword led her to perform. This is something unheard of before. But with Yae Sakura's current physique, using Sakura Fukuyuki to forcefully swing, let alone how much harm it can cause to the surrounding environment, she alone has to stay out of bed for several days. Yuji ran to Sakura, held Sakura's small hand that was flushed red, and comforted, does it hurt? Yuzakura shook her head, but Jingying rolled in her eyes. Yes. I'm sorry. It's okay. It's okay. Yaeji hugged Sakura and whispered comfort. Seeing Sakura's mood gradually stabilized, Yuji went to comfort the frightened Rin again. Rin has been sitting in the shop, and Sakura is the closest to her. Don't be afraid, there is an older brother. Yuji kissed Rin's forehead, gently let her lie flat, and then covered the quilt. Have a good dream. Yuji sent Sakura Chugzyu back to the temple where she was enshrined, and the two little loli no longer wanted to see Sakura Chugzyu. Early the next morning, Yaeji put on a black coat, and Yae Sakura put on the costume of the alternate maiden. Yuji brought the fox mask distributed in the shrine to one side, and only put it on his face when the ceremony officially began. Glanced at her sister, who was not very interested. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com didn't know whether she was upset about what happened yesterday, or whether she was upset because of the depression brought about by the sacrifice ceremony. Put his palms on Sakura's thin shoulders and patted them softly. Sakura raised her head and looked at Yaeji. Elder brother. After the matter is over, I will start training your physical fitness. Whenever your physical fitness can keep up, you can try to control Ying Fuxu. Really? Sakura was excited for a moment, then lowered her head again, and said in frustration, I can't control it at all. I will never be as good as my elder brother, I. What do you think? Little fool. Just about to stretch the hand of sin to Sakura's little head, Yuji realized that today is the day to worship the gods, but she can't let Sakura go to the sacrifice with her head against the chicken coop. Otherwise, the older generation of villagers should say this again. Yae of the first generation does not know the etiquette. You know, Sakura Fubuki is obviously more biased towards girls like Sakura than I am a man. Obviously it has already recognized the elder brother as the master. How can a maiden not be worthy of a spiritual sword? Sakura will become a shrine maiden in the future. I remember who said yesterday that she would surpass me and become a maiden to protect everyone. I said. Sakura's small face flushed slightly, and her shyness made her lack confidence. That's right, my brother will rely on Sakura for protection from now on. Yes. Yae Sakura couldn't help but put her two clenched small fists on her chest, seeming to cheer herself up. As for what Yuji said, she didn't feel anything wrong at all. Maiko is destined to guard the existence of one party.